Today we're examining the future of the Vegas Golden Knights. What kind of reaction will we get now that they've missed the playoffs for the first time in team history? Could we see a coach or GM fired? Will there be trades? We'll discuss all the possibilities. Plus we have some trade talk concerning the Senators and the Canucks. And we have some signings, and another player is announcing his retirement. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As you can see, I'm not in my normal recording location. We're on the road in a hotel here, on the road for a couple of events between last night and tonight. So we'll be recording from the hotel today, likely be back at the home studio as of tomorrow. First up, we get word that longtime NHL player Dustin Brown has made the announcement that the Kings forward will retire at the completion of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Of course, he's had a pretty long career, obviously taken in the 2003 NHL draft class, along with Ryan Getzlaf, who just also announced his retirement as well. Brown's played for 18 years, just shy of 1,300 games, 325 goals, 387 assists for 712 points, also putting up 738 penalty minutes. So he's had a pretty solid career. A couple Stanley Cups in there during the great run of the Kings a number of years ago with the Daryl Sutter era. So pretty solid career. I'm sure he's hoping to end the season with another Stanley Cup, although it's going to be a tough task, but we'll see. They will do battle with the Edmonton Oilers in the first round here coming up in a few days' time. We also have a few signings to discuss today, including Sam Lafferty getting an extension in Chicago. He gets a 2-year deal. He's fitting quite nicely there since being acquired by the Pittsburgh Penguins in Chicago. He gets a 2-year deal valued at $2.3 million total, so a 1.15 AAV for the cap. So certainly not a bad deal for Chicago. Another team that's going to make some interesting choices this offseason as they likely start the beginning phase of a rebuild headed by Kyle Davidson, the new GM. We don't know the full extent of who will come and who will go and all that, but certainly Lafferty appears to be a valuable contract and a player who can play a role for them for the next couple of years as they navigate through the beginning process of that rebuild. Of course, the Minnesota Wild have also announced a signing as well. One of their prospects who they were probably a little bit concerned about maybe not keeping in the prospect pool here because he's a 2018 draft pick, so he would have become a free agent next summer if he had not been signed. But Simon Johansson is a 22-year-old defenseman taken in 2018, 148th overall, will be making the jump over to North America and finally comes over from Sweden. He gets a 2-year entry-level contract, and I'm sure he's likely going to need some time in the AHL before he really has any kind of NHL opportunity, but still a prospect that they were not wanting to lose after not getting him signed here for the past few years for sure. And of course, we also saw with the games last night that the Florida Panthers have secured the President's Trophy for the first time in team history, the league's top regular season team. Of course, we know that doesn't really mean a whole lot, but we have seen enough teams win the President's Trophy and still have playoff success, win a Stanley Cup. So I know there's some people who thinks it's a jinx and that doesn't really mean anything, but I think I believe it's like 8 times in the last number of years that we've seen it happen. So it works out to be, I think, about 1 every 4 years on average that the President's Trophy winner does win the cup. So the playoffs are really, really tough. You don't know who you're going to be matched up against. It's a long, hard grind. You don't know what kind of health your players are going to have. Lots of X factors in there for sure, but certainly a situation where they've been the regular season's best team. So I don't think it's any kind of a jinx associated with it. I just think that it comes with a lot of tough territory. Of course, they had a 4-0 win last night in their final visit to Ottawa for the season, and that was with a lot of players rested. So this goes to show you how deep and talented this team is. They had no Barkov, no Huberdeau. I believe they also rested a few other players, and they still had a shutout victory. So this team is going to be a force to be reckoned with when it gets to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Not quite 100% determined yet who they are going to play. Some of the final matchups will be determined with tonight's game, as most teams playing their final game today. Of course, we do have the Jets and the Kraken play on the weekend to make up that game that was rescheduled to the April snowstorm in blizzard in Winnipeg not too long ago. Let's cancel a game unexpectedly. Otherwise, the regular season effectively wraps up tonight, and the playoffs will begin on Monday. Now, looking at the trade rumor section of the video, I want to start with the Vegas Golden Knights. Everybody's talking about this today, of course. It's a hot topic since they missed the playoffs for the first time in team history. Not only did they miss the playoffs, but they did so and, create a little bit more controversy in the whole Robin Lehner scenario and everything played out. We've heard Elliot Friedman and Jeff Mayer talking about it today on the 32 Thoughts podcast. Frank Saravalli's also been touching on it as well on the Daily Faceoff programming. Now, according to Saravalli, this is just his opinion. I don't know if he really has sources that indicate this could actually happen or it's just his gut instinct, but he feels that head coach Peter DeBoer has a good chance of being cut loose, and he wouldn't be shocked if GM Kelly McCrimmon or George McPhee was also shown the door. I'm not 100% convinced we're going to see that. Now, in DeBoer's case, I wouldn't be completely surprised. Because I think one of the biggest decision and the biggest thing they're going to have to work on this offseason, in my opinion, is Robin Lehner and that relationship. I think, for the most part, a lot of people seem to agree that one of the best things the Golden Knights could do is to not overreact. And they have to come to terms with the fact here that they have a lot of good players and they have a lot of injuries this year that were just something that was too difficult to overcome. They knew about Eichel and his injury situation coming into that acquisition, but obviously that's going to cause them to have some tough cap decisions. It didn't really make an impact this year with having to shed salary, but it will for sure next year, assuming everybody can come back healthy. So if you have a healthy Eichel, a healthy Stone, a healthy Pacioretty, Stone and Pacioretty only appeared in 30-some games each. Alec Martinez only played 25. Eichel only played around 30-something. They didn't have a healthy lineup for the bulk of the year. Robin Lehner was dealing with multiple injuries for the last couple of months before he was finally shut down here just in the last few days too. So to me, I do agree with that analogy. They are going to be forced to make some moves. They can't run back the exact same team. That just can't happen because the salary cap indicates that they just cannot. Assuming that Eichel, Pacioretty, Stone, etc. are all back and healthy, they need to shed about $10 million or more in salary. So, many feel that Evgeny Dadonov likely will have another trade coming his way. This one hopefully will go to a team that's not on his protected list so that he can accept the trade, not have to go through what he did before with the Anaheim Ducks. And of course, who else goes? It's a tough question. I know there's reports from Friedman today on the 32 Thoughts podcast saying he was tipped off a while back before the deadline, saying that he had been told that an extension for Riley Smith was pretty much a done deal, and that Riley Smith was representing himself, wasn't using an agent, and was actually pretty close to agreeing to terms. Now, with all the controversy and everything going on with Vegas right now around the Lehner situation, a lot of people seem to be kind of dunking on them, showing the fact that they are happy to see them going through a tough time. And I think a lot of that stems with what we've seen here in recent years and how they treat people. Of course, it started with former head coach Gerard Gallant, who did a fantastic job, and then really, even in a season where they really weren't doing terrible at all. Normally you see coaches get fired when teams are struggling and going to miss the playoffs or having a stretch of time where they're underperforming, and that wasn't even the case. The other thing a lot of people probably don't know is there was rumors of a verbal extension being in place between Gallant and management, but hadn't been officially signed yet, and then he got fired. So this makes it look that much worse. And I think the main reason they fired him was when the opportunity came up to hire Peter DeBoer. I guess they saw him as an upgrade, and he's a great coach, but it just goes about how you treat people. They went from this team that was really close and cohesive and, really kind of taking in all these players that other teams didn't want, so to speak. A coach who had previously been let go under not great terms in Florida, and kind of took him in and kind of created this this bunch of people that were having a lot of success together, but then, as they saw they could win, they really became a cold-hearted business, which I understand it's results-driven and all that, and you want to win at all costs, but at the same time, you do have to watch how you treat people, in my opinion, as well. And between that and the Fleury situation, it's just starting to get bad, and that's why Saravalli wonders if some coaching and management situations might end up being swapped and people might be losing some jobs here, even though if ownership looks at this though and says, if they're logical, because we know Bill Foley wants to win at all costs, and obviously they've spent a ton of money trying to acquire all the new shiny toys and objects on the market. If a top player comes on the market, they felt they had to go get them, and it doesn't mean you're automatically going to have the chemistry, right? They have a good team on paper, but are they really a cohesive group that can work well and mesh well together we won't really know because we haven't seen a lot of this group play together consistently enough. But at the end of the day here, if they don't overreact and we don't see anything drastic, a coaching change might be what's required to make Robin Lehner kind of fix that relationship and make him a little bit happier and content about coming back. We know he wasn't overly pleased, at least it looks that way, about how he was kind of thrown under the bus, even though he was playing hurt. And then on top of that, he gets pulled in a 1-1 game when he wasn't playing badly at all. And then DeBoer's comments to say that he was only really concerned about the players and the injured players that were fighting through in the lineup. Like, it just was really... I don't know, Leonard was his guy, and then all of a sudden he's throwing him under the bus making these comments. It doesn't look good, and I would think that mending that relationship is going to be really tough, and it wouldn't be shocking to say if they do go with a coaching change to help do that, because I don't know if they can afford to really lose Robin Lehner. I mean, they can't just hand the net over to Logan Thompson. I don't think he's quite ready for that. He played well for them, sure, here down the stretch, but I don't know if he's ready to be a starter without an experienced backup. Like, to me, he could certainly work with Lehner as a tandem. I don't think there's any issues there. He's proven himself to be a legitimate goalie, but still, that's a pretty tough job to put him in. I think would be asking a little bit too much of him. So we'll see what happens, but I think we're going to probably see possibly a coaching change. I think we're going to see at least a Donoff move, and one other player likely have to go because of cap situations. They also have to get new deals done for Hag and Waugh, and that's not going to be easy too. Like, this team's already way over the cap, so it's going to be a very interesting team to watch here. But let me know your thoughts. Do you think the Golden Knights would be wise to not overreact and to look at their injury situation as being such a huge part of the reason why they're not a playoff team this coming season? Certainly lots of big names there that can perform well. If you get them all healthy and get them all in the same lineup at the same time, probably make a huge difference. Now, also on to Vancouver. We've heard a lot about the future of Brock Besser. We talked about JT Miller. There was a lot of talk when Jim Rutherford first took over that his big concern was gaining some cap space and some flexibility in the future, and that certainly appears to be the case still to some degree. But I know Rick Dhaliwal was reporting on his show here in the last day that Brock Besser trade is a lot less likely now, that from what he's hearing, that they've really zoned in on the fact that they really want him back. The problem is that his qualifying offer is $7.5 million, and the ideal scenario here is to get him signed and to come to terms ahead of time, so they can obviously don't have to qualify that contract, and they can get him done sooner. Because if they don't have a deal in place and they have to tender the qualifying offer, they're going to have to end up taking him through arbitration in order to get it lowered, because they can do that for not meeting the expectations enough to qualify. Because if they don't qualify, maybe it becomes a UFA, and they're not going to do that. That much is a given, because then he can walk on his own and they lose him for nothing. So that's not going to be something that we see here. Now, of course, with Besser, though, Dhaliwal saying that it doesn't necessarily have to be a long-term deal at this point, that it might be best for both sides if they do a short-term deal, maybe a 2-year deal, which ultimately would take him to the earliest time here to qualify for a free agency. But it might be what's best for him and the team, considering that, around that same time, when we have another little bit of time left on contracts for guys like Horvat and Miller. It just might buy them some time, might be good for Besser as well to continue to kind of hopefully put up a better result, better showing personally, to get a better contract longer term on the next deal. So, I mean, it's risky because they might risk losing him for nothing, but at the same time, it appears, though, that they're really focused on making sure that Besser is a part of the team going forward. It sounds really, really likely that Bruce Boudreau will be back as head coach as long as they can come to terms on a new contract. So that seems to be pretty much decided. But if they do want cap space, flexibility, which it appears to still be the case, and now we're not so much hearing a lot about top names being shipped out, you'd have to think a guy like a Connor Garland or maybe a Tyler Myers would be you're more likely to go. It just goes to show you right now how much that Ekman-Larsson-Garland trade is really looking bad, because as much as Garland played well, and Ekman-Larsson, I guess, was probably better in Vancouver than he had been in Arizona recently. That's fair to say. I don't think he was absolutely atrocious. I don't think he was awesome either. But the cap space that those two contracts tie up compared to a lot of those bad deals that would have been expiring after this year that they shipped out to Arizona as a part of that trade, I think I would hope they'd be having some buyer's remorse in that respect. Now, it's also looking like the Ottawa Senators have finally come to the realization that Nikita Zaitsev is not a great NHL defenseman. I mean, it's been pretty obvious to most Sens fans for a couple of years since they've acquired him, even before that at the end of his time in Toronto. But according to Bruce Garriock, it's quite likely that the Sens do try to move on from the Russian defenseman this offseason that, from what he's been hearing, that going into next year, he wouldn't likely be a top 6D. He'd be on the outside looking in. It wouldn't be a regular in the starting lineup. So I guess from that perspective, I mean, and it makes sense to try to move on. Really, if you think about it, they've seen, obviously, Shabbat. We know he's the number one defenseman. There's no doubt about that at all. But we've seen him and Artem Zub have a way better partnership than him with Zaitsev. So Zub's a solid top 4 guy. You get Jake Sanderson coming into the fold in the mix next year. He should slot as a second pair D to start his NHL career. On top of that, you've got Eric Brandstrom. It's not quite clear where he fits. Whether or not to play him on his right side and play him in top 4, or maybe he's a third pair. But he certainly emerged this year as a capable defenseman. Still has some growth, things to go through, but I think he can play. And then, of course, you got Nick Holden, who's a good veteran back there, preferably on the left side, but can play the right if need be. And then after that, it's kind of unclear. You got maybe Hamonic, could be the right shot on Shabbat's top pair, but can he keep up with those minutes? You know that Shabbat ends up playing with multiple D, but it doesn't leave a spot for Zaitsev. And that's assuming that they don't trade for an upgrade on D, which is certainly a possibility that we might see as well. So really, Zaitsev, even if they have to retain some salary and throw in an extra pick or something, they can move that contract like Bruce Skarek is saying, then to me that would be a fantastic way to kind of move this team forward. I know there's some UFAs likely aren't coming back, like Tierney. Wouldn't be surprised if Ennis doesn't come back. Even some RFAs like debatable, and guys like Adam Gaudette or Dylan Gambrell, not 100% sure how they all fit in the mix. Obviously, the big priority for the Sens this offseason will be getting Josh Norris locked up on a long-term extension, because he certainly had a pretty solid ending to his ELC year this year, putting up over 30 goals and is looking like he could be a number one center with 40 goal potential. So we'll see where that goes, but it's going to be expensive, and they need to get that done as a top priority. So let me know your thoughts on everything discussed here today down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.